Hello, my soccer universe. My name is Roland, and this is Football Talk. And due to me being out sick last week, I'm now summarizing the quarterfinals all in one fell swoop, first legs and return legs. I can also tell you I will do the very same actually for the semifinals because I'm traveling to the cup final. Will there be the first title for Lusk since 1965? And so I won't be able to record anything on the Friday after the first leg of the semifinals. But there's a happy occasion for that. And maybe it's even better to look at it more in a holistic sense. Because one thing I can tell you, what I learned from these quarterfinals in all three European competitions. And yes, the Champions League had two absolute standout ties, beautiful, wonderful football. But the one thing that I could really learn is that A, you cannot rely solely on superstars anymore. B, you need to have a structure in order to be successful. But most importantly, C, the structure needs to be complete or needs to be able to absorb potential frailties up front. You can take this throughout every single tie that we saw now. And that I think is really interesting. And for me, the two standout examples here, and not only for that, but in general, are the two Spanish giants in Real Madrid and Barcelona. Two completely different approaches to the game, but both of them flawed. In Real Madrid's case, it's very easy. They have absolute star power up front. They had Bayern Munich, the strongest team this year in the Champions League, arguably, absolutely on the edge. It was a match where it was just about will it tip over or not. However, if you have two superstars up front that do not do any defensive work, especially when you then go down to 10 men, even if it's only for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, one of those needs to actually come back. Because it makes the job of the others so much harder. And yes, you probably take away from their brilliance at times. But the brilliance is there anyway. And so for me, this was absolutely flawed. And it was, on the other flip side, it was the brilliance of the two strikers that kept Real Madrid very much in that game. Because let's face it, defensively, they are not very sound at all. This is not a good Real Madrid team. Barcelona, on the other hand, and that's the exact opposite. They have a clear structure. They play this high line. They rely also on their star power up front. But here the two crucial things. The defensive line has been weakened over the past year, and I do have to also say that they're defending in high urgency situations, like when you make these last man fouls, it's just naive. But it's also young players most of the time there, but it's just naive. Because sometimes you just have to let the attacker go and rely on your goalkeeper and rely that you have a better chance getting back with a full team than making a foul, even as innocuous as you think it might be. And then add to it that, yes, Lamine Yamal was brilliant. I mean, it's a joy to watch this play, and probably the biggest downside that we had now is that Lamine Yamal will not be present in the competition anymore. But the problem is Lamine Yamal more or less by himself. Rafinha was missing on the other side, so his foil that kind of makes the balance in attack was missing. And that makes the task for Atlético Madrid, as hard as it is to defend against Lamine Yamal, it made it easier because, Ferran Torres, Fermin Lopez, Lewandowski, they don't bring the same power. And yes, Barcelona were close. I think of all the teams that got eliminated in the quarterfinal stage in the Champions League, I would argue that Barcelona were the closest ones to actually advance. They were in their play superior, but I don't want to take from Atleti, because Atleti, in their own way, was absolutely amazing the way they did it. Just look at the goal that Lookman scored to send them through. Brilliantly worked. They also took advantage of every little weakness that Barcelona has. And even ending two crazy series along the way. I mean, I think Simeone hasn't won at the Camp Nou. They did that now. And Atlético Madrid have never lost at home under Simeone. They did that now. But still, Atleti did come out on top. Because they were just in the crucial moments more dedicated there. Whereas for Barcelona, they were profligate up front. But you could also see that their defensive mistakes, and I really blame the two red cards that were absolutely unnecessary. But what do the big Spanish giants blame? Of course, the referees. And this is the other thing that is annoying me. Be accountable for your own weaknesses and your own mistakes, and don't think that there is a grand conspiration against you. It is just annoying. And especially on the Real Madrid side. Yes, that red card for Camavinga was maybe a little bit nitpicky, but it is completely covered by the rules. Camavinga on a yellow card should not play around with the ball like that. It's like a red card if you celebrate with taking the shirt off. It's an automatic yellow card. Yes, it's not a big offense. Yes, it's not dangerous. But making this not a big thing, that this is why you went out, that's ridiculous. Because Bayern were already on top at that point. And the other thing is that Bayern has not been really complaining, but there was a clear penalty with a push in the back on Olise that was not given at the Bernabeu. But Bayern did not make a big stink about that one. And so there were so many things that were going actually in Madrid's favor that kept them in the tie. But now this red card is the one thing. And the same thing for Barcelona. I mean, it's obvious why you lost. Because your players are inexperienced. Because your players made dumb decisions along the way. Kubarsi never should have gotten sent off. Let Simeone run through. Let the ball pass through. Why are you even there? Let him go along. It would have been a nothing. No, you're 1-0 down and a man down. And yes, it's impressive that you still, with a man less, could play well. And you were well in the game. And probably you should have made it 3-0. But you didn't make it 3-0. And then blaming Musso that he should have gotten a red card when this was absolutely accidental. Nah, I just cannot get along with that. And it is very much Spanish now, because another theme is, of course, that many Spanish teams went out. Well, I mean, Barcelona went out by design. One Spanish team would have gone. Bayern eliminated Real Madrid, almost expected in the Europa League that both Celta and Betis got ousted, and Rayo almost squandering a pretty big lead. It was not a good 2 weeks for La Liga, honestly. Even though Atlético against Barça was a perfect commercial for La Liga. I also want to say that I have to say, if you watched any of the ties with the Premier League teams, maybe with the slight exception of Forest against Porto, but even that, it was blah. The Premier League teams still left in Europe, or that were left in Europe, you barely could watch that stuff. I mean, prime example, Arsenal. The best football, the most successful football, and financially the Premier League is up top. But at the moment, the Premier League is reverting to a version of football that was 20 years ago with high physicality, dead ball situations, and so on. But you barely can watch that one, and especially when you look at Arsenal. Won't Arsenal against Atleti in the semi-finals be fun? But more on that in a little bit. I would say, after all these observations, let's quickly recap what was happening, and we'll start in the Champions League, and we have to start with Bayern against the Real Madrid. For all the polemics that came afterwards, I have to say that tie lived up to its billing. And it lived not up to its billing because everything was so perfect. It is because there were mistakes in there that made it actually great. And I cannot tell you how annoyed I was that due to the right situation in Austria, I could not watch the return leg live. I was stuck here with the dross that was Arsenal against Sporting. Really annoyed me. Fortunately, I did other things alongside and I didn't miss much. But that matchup, already the game in the Bernabeu, it was so weird because, especially in the Bernabeu, you felt that Bayern are clearly the better team. But Bayern did not convert all their chances. But even then they had a 2-0 lead. You thought, oh, this could go now 3-4 or whatever. But then Real Madrid got back. And they had their chances. Mbappé especially was really crucial in keeping Bayern honest. And it spoke volumes that the man of the match in Madrid was Manuel Neuer. Bayern were dominant, were great. I mean, the goals by Luis Diaz and Harry Kane, and what a great duo up front they are. Add to it Michael Olise. Wonderful what Bayern have. And I'm definitely not a Bayern fan, but absolutely wonderful. But for all their dominance, they also have a little bit flaws on the back, but their defensive structure is usually good enough, and they can rely on all the brilliance up front that I think Bayern will see this through. Vincent Kompany doing a great job. But then, irony of all ironies, the man of the match from Madrid became the zero of the match in Munich. In the first minute, Neuer plays an overconfident pass right into the path of Arda Güler, who just, brilliant shot, one-times it into the net. And so in the first minute, the scores were level. And what followed was a symphony. Symphony that I couldn't watch, but I've watched highlights, I heard enough of it. It was everything that you want from a great Champions League tie, especially in that first half. And especially how Real Madrid, whenever you thought that Bayern are going to take control, Real Madrid were hitting back. The free kick by Arda Güler. Again, Neuer not looking all the great. And I think here you can be really both that the free kick was excellent, but also that Neuer did not look good in here. Also, you had this beautifully worked Harry Kane goal, but then Mbappé again re-establishes the lead after Vinny hit the crossbar. I mean, that first half was just crazy. There was, of course, another goalie mistake. I mean, what did Lunin do on the equalizer for Bayern, where Pavlovic is just standing there and the ball falls into the net. I mean, it looked almost like it was an Olympic corner. But this game had everything. And when it was 3-2 for Madrid at half, and scores are level, and the way Real Madrid have been hitting Bayern, I was really fearing that this is now, again, this is an even-numbered year. Real Madrid are gonna find again their mojo in the Champions League and might as well go all the way. Well, it didn't quite go their way. We talked already in the intro about the red card. I think that Bayern were taking more and more control of the game the longer the game went. Alexander-Arnold, as brilliant as he is in offense, in defense, he was seriously lacking, and Bayern figured that one out as well. And still there was a great chance by Mbappé, who was already brilliantly assisted by Alexander-Arnold for the one goal in Madrid, when Neuer actually stood tall for once. But then we had the red card, and then everyone was watching around when Luis Diaz is getting the equalizer. Yes, it was a deflected shot, but that sent Bayern through, and then Olise scores an absolutely brilliant goal to make it 4-3 for Bayern on the night. And they win it with a 6-4 aggregate line, but that game was a whole lot closer. And the one thing you have to say is, this Bayern team is widely considered at the moment to be the gold standard in Europe. They are brilliant. And we also have to say that a not perfect Real Madrid team that just lives off the star power up front gave them serious trouble. And that's what will make their semi-final against PSG so intriguing. Because PSG is now hitting also the right form at the right time. They saw off Liverpool with relative ease. The first leg should have been way more dominant than the 2-0 scoreline was. It could have been 4 easily. And again, like last season, the first leg was very much dominant PSG. Back then, Liverpool even nicked that one. At Anfield, I also thought that PSG were actually for the first 20 or 30 minutes a far better team. They just didn't convert the chances, especially Dembélé. What's happening with the Ballon d'Or winner? Suddenly he's not hitting the net anymore. And then, you had the injuries happening to Atlético, so Salah comes on. He immediately creates a chance where Marquinhos makes a huge block on Van Dijk. If that goes in, I think Anfield might be rocking. But it's also from that point on that then Matvei Safonov started to step up. I mean, the one save he made on Rio, great young talent for Liverpool. In the one period where Liverpool was really dominant, right in the second half, There was a period where Liverpool actually put the pressure on PSG to try to get back into the game. How much urgency, especially on the PSG side, was there when we think about it? I mean, PSG just needed to get a 2-goal lead over the line. But yeah, they were reeling, but they were also standing defensively tall. And then one counter-attack, and it is Dembele who scores, and then he adds a second one. And it felt like a mercy kill in many ways. PSG really, maybe not as awesome as they were last season, but they're starting to hit form. And what I think is overlooked is that Matvei Safonov, he's not Donnarumma, but he has great saves in there. And he's also good on penalties. So he might not be the downgrade that many have been saying on Donnarumma, because he's good with his feet. As I said, the PSG squad will have the hands full against Bayern Munich, but what a matchup that will be. Because here we have now two very offensive structures against each other, with star power up front and maybe a little bit lax defending on the back. Popcorn. Get your popcorn ready. This should be awesome. PSG against Bayern is usually awesome. Only the Champions League final did not live up to the billing. If yours, because there should have been way more goals in that one. On the other side, we have our Atlético Madrid against Arsenal. Let's talk about the positive side of that one. Atlético Madrid against Barcelona was also an absolutely epic quarterfinal tie. And Barcelona have been brilliant for most of the time. But they imploded. I already talked about it in the opener. If Kubarsi doesn't commit that red card foul, there is you're still with 11 men. You still can go with a full squad into the second leg. And you don't give away the free kick that Julian Alvarez so beautifully converts. Yes, Barcelona created many chances and probably should have scored. Musso did quite well, and we are meanwhile not talking Atlético Madrid, we're talking Atalanta Madrid, because Musso was at Atalanta, Lookman was at Atalanta, Ruggeri was at Atalanta. So there's at least a little bit the Italian heart still in there. Atletico Madrid were ruthless, but also, while Barcelona fans will always say, oh, we outplayed them, no, you did not. Because this is exactly what Atletico Madrid was. They managed Barcelona. Yes, it is dangerous. And yes, they were sitting on the edge. But whenever Atletico Madrid attacked, there was a whole lot of thought behind that. They knew their strengths. They knew that they can weather the storm. They also knew that we can hurt Barcelona because of that high line. And I'm not blaming the high line like many others do. This is a choice by Barcelona, and if Rafinha plays, and for me this is the game changer here, this might have ended differently. This is not an Atletico Madrid that is defensive as the Atletico Madrid 10 years ago. No, absolutely not. But this is an Atletico Madrid that can be deadly on the counter-attack, that has brilliant players. And one player that always does something against Barcelona is Sørloth, who scores the 2-0, and therefore you thought this is a huge advantage to Atletico Madrid. If only. Because Barcelona had that advantage wiped out within 25 minutes of the second leg in Madrid. The stadium went quiet. Lamine Yamal, even the first minute, could have scored. He took the game on his shoulders. He took his team on his shoulders. It was absolutely brilliant. And add to it that I think it was Langlais had a pretty bad first half. Barcelona took advantage of it, but too little. I mean, Ferran Torres gets the equalizer on aggregate. He probably had another chance in there. Lamine Yamal, as I said, probably should have scored already in the first minute. And then the big one. A beautiful cross by Yamal in. And Fermin Lopez has a point-blank header that Musso saves. And then also there is the injury, because Fermin's face and Musso's foot collide. Not on purpose. Let me say this clear. This was never any red card offense. But they collide, and that gives a break in which Simeone made the adjustments, and then a brilliantly worked goal by Atletico Madrid. And again, the goals that Atleti scored, they're all brilliant in this time. Especially the one by Lookman that got them back in. Yes, Ferran thought he had the 3-1. It was offside. And then again, you give away a red card, and yes, I can see maybe a point that Koundé could have gotten to Sørloth, but on the other side, could he really have? Because Sørloth might have taken a shot very quickly, and therefore Eric Garcia, you could only walk. It is sad that we won't see Lamine Yamal again, but I think Atlético Madrid overall deserved their victory in a really edgy tie. And now they face Arsenal. I don't want to say much about that one. Arsenal against Sporting was awful to watch throughout. Sporting should have taken the lead in the first leg. I mean, the way they hit the crossbar, but then also Arsenal did a little bit like that. But I felt that Sporting just, especially in first leg with Hjulmand missing, there was really a hole in midfield. But Sporting did hold their own against Arsenal, but you could see that Arsenal is overall a better team. They could hold the ball better, and yes, had a good goal. Not a good goal, but had a goal rightfully ruled out by offside, and then they scored one through Havertz, which was a brilliant finish. Second leg, Sporting went first for containment. Arsenal had more of the ball. Blah, 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 blah. Sporting never could get the big chance except for the one times they hit the post. Could have gone another way. Maybe Sporting should have played braver because Arsenal seemed to have no confidence at this moment. And so Atlético Madrid against Arsenal is an interesting tie because I was wondering the other day, I was trying to make a mental ranking of the 8 quarterfinalists, and I came to the conclusion that Arsenal feels bigger than Atlético Madrid. But Atlético Madrid's European record far outdoes the one by Arsenal. So who's really the bigger team? Isn't it Atlético Madrid? If Atlético Madrid beat Arsenal in that final, I say it. Atlético Madrid are a better team than Arsenal. A bigger club than Arsenal. Atlético Madrid can get it done in Europe. Arsenal rarely ever does. If I'm really mean, I would say Arsenal wants to be Darth Vader, but it's more Dark Helmet from Spaceballs, if you know that reference. Let's move over to the Europa League. I think the Europa League was characterized by Spanish exodus and English dominance in a way as well. I mean, we had twice Premier League against Serie A, easily won by the Premier League. In these 2 weeks, we had twice La Liga against the Bundesliga, and the Bundesliga prevailed there. So note that we also had Premier League against Liga Portugal, and also Premier League prevailed there. So we can see kind of where everything is lining up. Although I think it will be La Liga who will probably snatch that elusive 5th spot. But maybe the Bundesliga still have a shot. I actually have not checked the rankings now, and we'll talk about this some other time, I would say. Let's start with Braga against Betis, because that one was crazy. First of all, what a great goal by Grealish to open the scoring in Braga. Cuchanandes equalizes from the penalty spot. But what happened yesterday was just mad. And again, game I couldn't watch because of rights, blah, blah, blah. Betis dominated the game. Had an easy 2-0 lead, fully deserved. However, Braga struck right before halftime and right after halftime to set everything level again. Then they get a penalty and they had a 4th one. And Betis, who have been dominant. I think Braga had not more than 6 shots. But 4 of them went in. I mean, it's crazy how Braga managed that one. This is where the momentum goes through. And again, for all the brilliance in the system for Betis, this has been one of the weaknesses, to convert their dominance into goals. Betis are a fun team to watch, really. If I see them in La Liga, usually I really there's a lot of sympathy for me for Betis, I have to say. But they couldn't get it done. And so Braga move on, and I just couldn't believe it. When I saw the highlights of the game, I thought this was probably tighter. Yes, Betis maybe had a 2-1 lead at one point. It was a hard battle, where in the end Braga moved on. But no, Betis was so fully in control and they just lost it. Again, defensive frailties on the back. So Betis are out. And Celta are also out. And this is even more flabbergasting because Freiburg is not a huge team in a European context. Absolutely not. First time in the semi-final. Whereas Celta is a good team, but you thought that this might be way more even. But Freiburg already rolled over them 3-0 in Freiburg. And then, yes, they just looked at what can you do to us? Celta scored twice before halftime, one after. Vincenzo Grifo, of course, being really good in the whole context, and Freiburg moved easily, 6-1 on aggregate, past Celta. A result that I really did not necessarily see. I could imagine Freiburg moving on, but I thought that Celta will have a little bit more, because Celta have been playing well. But Freiburg, I always said, watch out for those German teams. I mean, Stuttgart is probably the better one, but they played against a good Porto side. But Freiburg, they have now a clear path to the final. And given who Freiburg are, I mean, this is a team that slowly built themselves up from a small town in the Black Forest. Beautiful town. Absolutely one of my favorite towns in Germany, if not my favorite town in Germany. Don't get me wrong, but it feels very, not as a rural, but, minor. That they are doing it now. They have a nice stadium and so on. It's a very likable club as well. So even though I'm usually not pro-Germany, Freiburg is a super likable club, and so very happy that they're moving on. Even though I like Celta also. So yeah. So we have Braga against Freiburg. I'm not going to make a prediction here. I mean, I have a gut feeling that Freiburg probably is on a roll now and probably will do it. But what Braga did to Betis, just beggars belief, to be honest. Just beggars belief. The other semi-final is an all-English affair of two great teams from the late 70s, early 80s in Forest against Villa. Let's do Villa against Bologna first. Bologna, it was so cute in the first leg. I mean, Bologna really tried, put a lot of passion and effort in it. Just didn't convert, and then Oli Watkins just shows up once or twice in front of goal, and it's 2-0 Villa already. Then Bologna scored a one goal, and you think, yeah, maybe we can get ourselves back in there. There was so much energy coming from the crowd. But, Bologna is a little bit, although they have a much deeper history, but a little bit like Freiburg in the Bundesliga. Kind of cute. And, yeah, got in, and then immediately Villa made it 3-1. And yesterday they just took apart Bologna. Even the keeper saved a penalty, but from the resulting throw-in, they cannot defend properly. It was ugly. It was not a good showing for Bologna and Vincenzo Italiano, who actually has gotten Fiorentina twice to a final. But Villa were just better. And Villa will be considered the favourites, even especially against Nottingham Forest. I mean, just look at the league position and so on. But they play this weekend as well. I have to be honest, I think the Porto should have probably ousted Forest. It was again individual mistake, similar to Barcelona, where Porto have to point their fingers to. I mean, you take the 1-0 lead and then this back pass into the own net almost a minute later, crazy, and then the player even has to be substituted for an injury. I mean, what a rotten time. Forest actually had scored a second goal, but overall you always felt that Porto are the more complete team, and it showed even in Nottingham when Porto were the better team. But again, a very early red card, then really followed by a quick 1-0. I think Maitland-Niles or something like that gave Forest the lead, but even with a man less, Porto outplayed Forest for large portions of that game. It was crazy. They hit twice the woodwork. They should have equalized. Porto probably had them really on the ropes, and you could see it in the spectators who were yawning. It was nervous. It was everything. You're a goal and a man up. You should see this easily through. So Forest, while on one side it's great to see them go all that far, I think the best side actually went out here. I would have loved to see Villa against Porto. I think that would have been interesting. But then Porto also have a rotten record in England. That's where they cannot win. And that's really, really strange. So one Premier League side will be in the final. I would assume Villa against Freiburg. Yeah, I mean, it is picture made for Villa to get a European trophy and get into the Champions League that way. It's probably the best chance, because if I look at the competition, this should be easy for Villa. But, again, any one of these can hurt everybody else. But the most complete squad here is Villa. And then finally in the Conference League, my thesis from the Champions League that no lead is safe pretty much applied here too. I mean, after the first leg, all the ties were more or less done. We had 3-0 home wins plus a 2-0 home win with a dominant performance. And let's start actually with the dominant performance. by Mainz over Strasbourg. First leg, it was all Mainz. Strasbourg had only once they hit the crossbar, but this was their only real foray into the opposition. Mainz were really good, especially in the first half, but even the second half, they should have made it 3, if not 4. And they paid for that dearly yesterday, because at halftime, Strasbourg had equalized, and then Mainz fell apart. Just look at the defending. Unfortunately, Posch from Austria in there on the 3-0 for Strasbourg. Then there's a penalty. Strasbourg had a lot of power there. And yes, they are the number 1 seed. They won the league phase. So I guess their honor was a little bit taken. There were also done some scenes afterwards where Strasbourg players were celebrating from the Mainz players, and that caused all kind of stuff. Those two cities are not that far apart. They're all on the River Rhine. And Mainz fans actually traveled by boat there, which I think is so cool if you can do that. So Strasbourg are through, and they will meet Rayo in the semifinals. Rayo also almost threw away a brilliant position after the first leg. I mean, the 3-0 was maybe a little bit too high, but they struck Ike whenever they could. And the best goal was the one that did not count. I think it would have made it 2-0. For Rayo, if you can see, look it up. Brilliant goal that was chalked off for offside. But Rayo really seemingly got the job done in the first leg. 3-0. We can go easily to Athens and just see it out. Ha 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 ha. Right after the half, Ike made it 3-0. Tied it. Easy then pops up in the 60th minute to give Rayo the lead on aggregate again. But that was nervy. And then, yes, Ike probably had one chance. But Rayo then with a lot of gamesmanship saw it through. I'm not sure if they've ever been in a semi-final before. I don't think so. But yeah, they go far. But they cannot afford another performance like that. Not against Strasbourg. Strasbourg, I think, look like a favorite in this one. For sure. The other two ties were a bit more one-sided. I mean, Crystal Palace are just better than Fiorentina. Fiorentina is focusing on the league. Yes, the 3-0 was a little bit high in the first leg. I mean, the 3-0 came in the 90th minute. In the second leg, they quickly had a 1-0. Had to make some substitutions for injuries. That allowed then Fiorentina to come back a little bit because Glasner went safe. But it's a 4-2 on aggregate. And at least the Italians got one win. But I always saw Palace winning that one. However, I think the semi-final for Palace might be a tough one, because I have to laud the one team that I do not have in the collection that is in the semi-final, which is Shakhtar Donetsk. They easily cruised past AZ 5-2 in aggregate, winning the first leg 3-0. Yes, it took a while until the goals came, but when they came, they came. And in the second leg, yes, AZ were saving players for the cup final on the weekend. So that also played into it. As soon as Shakhtar made it 1-0, we knew it's done. It's 4-0 in aggregate. AZ turned it around, conceded a late equalizer, but that was never in doubt. I just want to laud Shakhtar. This is a team from Ukraine that cannot play in their home city for a decade now. More than a decade. That cannot even play in Ukraine in Europe. That have to deal with all the awful circumstances that this horrible attack war by Russia is bringing. And they make it to a semi-final where I think they are not without chance against Crystal Palace. Especially if Crystal Palace have injury problems. And while I would love Oliver Glasner winning another trophy, I mean, that's pretty clear at this point, I would love it if Shakhtar win that Conference League. Absolutely would love it. This would be such an achievement. We have to see if they can really do it. But that would be probably one of the better stories. Absolutely one of the better stories. So yeah, that's my recap. Action-filled, action-packed. And the semifinals, super intriguing. Especially Bayern against PSG. But I think even in the Europa League, I mean, you can, and Conference League, you can pick any one of these, and I think it will be intriguing. As I said, I won't be able to do a recap video after the first leg, so we'll do it again all in one, and then, my usual preparations for the finals. Looking forward to that. while I'm wearing this PSG jersey, I would love PSG to win the Champions League again. I actually think Bayern have to be considered the favorites. In the Europa League, I already said, it really seems to be Villas to lose. You have to get the job done though. And in the Conference League, it also points a little bit towards Palace, but I actually have a feeling that Shakhtar might do it. Shakhtar or Strasbourg. What a final that will be, Shakhtar against Strasbourg. But we shall see. Again, I would love if Oliver Glasner can win another trophy. So, those are my thoughts. Please let me know yours in the comments below. Do you agree with my thesis on structure that needs to be complete, that we cannot rely on superstars anymore and so on? Please let me know. Also, let me know who do you think will win these competitions. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this episode. I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye.